Hey y'all, today I'm going to be talking about Atkinson and Shiffrin's modal model of memory, but I'm going to be doing it with a little bit of a twist. I'm going to be talking about it through vines. So we're going to start off with sensory input. Sensory input is basically stimuli that's perceived by our senses. Those are going to be things like smell, sight, touch, taste, and hearing.
Look at all those chickens.
So you can think of that little girl as your brain, and you can think of the chickens as stimuli for your brain to interpret. Now, moving on to sensory memory, this is your shortest term element of memory. It's your capability to retain impressions of this sensory input after your original stimuli have already ended, and this information gets automatically put into your brain.
Road work ahead? Yeah, I sure hope it does.
So this guy's automatically processed the road work ahead sign. He's kept it in his memory just long enough to realize, hey, I hope that the road does work ahead of me. And if that information or some information is not getting automatically processed in your head, that's going to be considered unintended information, and that information is almost immediately lost.
And how much you pay for that taco?
Yo, you know this, boy, he's got his free taco.
The story here, folks, is that an unintended taco, basically a lost taco. Now, moving on to attention. Attention is basically this idea of actively processing information in our environment at, any given time.
Look at this graph!
I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. He's basically telling you, hey, actively process my graph. Moving on to working, otherwise known as short-term memory. This is your capacity for holding a small amount of information in your mind in an active and readily available state for a short period of time. This is going to be a couple seconds as well.
Two bros chilling in the hot tub, 5 feet apart because they're not gay.
So you can think of that hot tub as kind of like your working memory capacity, and you can think of those two bros as the active and readily available information that are staying in the brain for a short period of time. Another element of working memory is this maintenance rehearsal idea, and that's basically the process of repeatedly verbalizing or thinking about any given piece of information.
LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James, LeBron James.
I think this one's pretty self-explanatory too. He's basically repeating LeBron James a bunch of times. And if you're not doing maintenance rehearsal or you're not quite doing it right, that's going to turn into unrehearsed information, and just like unattended information, it's pretty quickly lost as well.
Dude, I thought you could do a kickflip.
I can. I did one this morning.
So clearly this guy thinks that he knows how to do a kickflip, but whenever he goes to try to do it again, it's pretty clear that he has not rehearsed enough and thus has lost his ability to do any kind of kickflip. Moving on to encoding, this is how you get information more securely stored and, more remembered, I suppose. This is just breaking down information into a way that's more easy for people to understand, or more easy for yourself to understand.
Get to Del Taco. They got a new thing called free shavacadoo. Free shavacadoo.
So fresh avocado is already 2 words, but Del Taco took it one step further by chunking it into those weird little sections. And this may not be necessarily easier to understand, but it might be easier to remember because it's so weird. Every time I pass a Del Taco, I think about free shavacadoo, so seems to have worked for me. And once you've encoded information, that gets put into your long-term memory. And long-term memory is basically the place where informative knowledge is put into your brain. It can be stored there indefinitely, and there's no limit to how much information your brain can hold.
Round and around and around.
And around and around. I like this game.
So this going round and round and round and round is kind of like the information that's just being kept in your brain for an indefinite amount of time. Indefinite amount of going around, indefinite amount of information that you get to hold in your brain. And if you need to take this information out of your brain for whatever reason, this is done with retrieval. And that's the process of reaccessing information and events after you've already encoded them. Basically, this is what remembering is.
Where did you get these bumps? You got eczema?
I got what?
The eczema?
So this kid, he's had some previous knowledge of eczema, and he's retrieving that from his long-term memory to apply it to this guy's face. Now, was it correct? Maybe, maybe not, but we'll talk about false memory recall another time. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is how some information is going to be lost over time. This is inevitable no matter how hard, you work to encode something in your brain. Sometimes some information you're just going to lose after a certain amount of time, no matter how hard you try.
Nate, how those chicken strips?
Fuck your chicken strips! Go, fuck your chicken strips!
So at some time before this, these guys probably had some chicken strips. And whenever prompted to remember these chicken strips, you heard the guy, obviously it didn't go over too well. He didn't necessarily recall anything about the chicken strips. He just kind of yelled about them, which means that we can think that perhaps he lost that information about how those chicken strips were. Sorry for the profanity in that last one. It's a personal favorite of mine, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope it was informative, and thanks for watching.